Chapter 4, Part 4, the 8th of February 2019. This must be the closest thing to heaven I've had for quite some time. It's 10:30 a.m. A glorious meal last night, with a few pints of beer and a sleep in the most comfortable bed I've ever slept in. It was like how I would imagine lying on a cloud to be. If I ever have reason to come to Cumbria again, I will certainly seek out this place. The breakfast just topped it off. I don't think I'll eat for a week now. I've only been here for 24 hours and I feel utterly refreshed. I've jotted a few questions down for Mr. Grimshaw and will log answers after the visit, before I return back to down the road. It shouldn't take more than an hour or so, I should be on the road mid-afternoon and avoid the worst of the traffic. 4:15 p.m. A little later than planned, but I did not take into account the slowness of old folk and their willingness to put the kettle on every 5 minutes. Still, it was another pleasant visit with a very nice man. When his time comes to shuffle off the earth, people will only have nice things to say about him. I wouldn't mind that as my epitaph. Paul Brunskill, born in May 1974, died, well, hopefully not for a few years yet, husband of Sheila from the Miners' Arms. He was a very nice man. That would do me. By the time we eventually sat on the sofa to talk, I was already halfway through my second coffee and a generous helping of Victoria sponge cake. We recapped on yesterday, dictaphone recording to ensure no inaccuracies, and I asked him if he wouldn't mind answering a few questions to pad out my profile to send to Mr. Green. He was more than happy to help. The questions and answers are logged below. Audio files will be saved from the home computer when I get back. Number 1. Can you tell me about your early life on the farm? We were an ordinary family, he said, nowt special. Mabel and David were loving and kind. We didn't have many possessions. Farming didn't make us a lot of money by any means, but we got by. My brother and I were close. I worked for many years on the farm, before school and after. It never felt like a chore, though, and David and Mabel were great with me. 2. Were you a close family? Very. We looked after each other, and I don't recall many arguments growing up. We appreciated each other, very much so. Question 3. How did you meet Sarah, your wife? Oh, we met at a dance in Wigton. Young Farmer's Night, I seem to recall. She was radiant. I fell for her straight away. She was so bonny. I knew that first night that she was the one for me. I don't think she felt the same. I was hopelessly shy and couldn't approach her in the way many of the other boys could. Thankfully, my friend approached her on my behalf. It nearly knocked me off my stool when she agreed to dance with me. I was so nervous, I could barely speak at first. I'd never been to the town before, let alone dance. How old were you when you met her? How old were you when you married her? It was 1950 when we met, and we courted for nearly 2 years before tying the knot. She was a beauty that day, an angel. I remember thinking, you've fallen on your feet, my boy. You'll never find a lady as good as this girl. We had many good years together. We spoilt our nieces as though they were our own children. It's a shame they don't live closer. I would love to see them more. They remind me very much of my darling Sarah. They have many of her traits, bright, daring, adventurous, living life to the full. We do chat often, but they have their own families and lives, and I'm too old to go gallivanting around the globe. I love them, though, and they love me, and that's good enough. Good enough. Question 5. Did you ever feel like settling down again after Sarah passed away? No, never. She was the only one for me. I never felt the urge to seek out someone else. I was lucky to have had her. We had nearly 40 years together. Nobody else could follow that. No, Sarah was the only girl for me. Cancer is a cruel illness. It killed part of me, too. Question 6. Have you always lived here? My life started here, and it will end here, too. It is only a little world, I know, but I love it around here. I feel very settled. Question 7. What happened to your brother? You said you two were close. Oh, we were. A tremendous bond grew between us. He was my rock. He was younger than me. Question 8. Was younger than you? Yes, we were parted when we were just young men. We lost contact before we were 20. It was the saddest time in my life. Question 9. Have you no idea what happened to him? No, we lost contact with him. We hoped he would get in touch, but he never did. We mourned him. It still aches when I think about him. Question 10. Can you tell me about any of your life achievements or qualifications and awards, etc.? Not much to report with you, to be honest. No school qualifications to call upon. A few gardening awards and badges, but it doesn't amount to much. My greatest achievement was a long and happy marriage. Do you have any regrets in life? No, after a long pause. At this point he looked up at me and smiled. It was time to go. He didn't have more to tell me. The questions about his brother and the passing of his wife clearly triggered memories that he didn't want to share with a stranger, and I understood that. I wasn't there to grill him. I was there to gather information. It was time to leave him in peace. I left him my card and contact details. He didn't have a mobile or an email address, but at least he could contact me if he wanted to. I took his details too, just in case. We shook hands and wished each other well. He was an old man living out his end days in a place he loved so much. He had spent his whole life here, in this unremarkable place, and yet it suited him. He was an unremarkable old man, but a very nice one at that. 6:30 p.m. The journey had given me plenty of thinking time. Maybe it was just the detective in me, but I felt something wasn't quite right. All the way back I had nagging doubts. I tried to recall everything that had been said and by whom. I'd been through the notes and tried to digest it all. Nothing evidential to support this odd feeling of disquiet. I went over it again to assure myself that I hadn't overlooked something important. I don't want to find that I've done a half-cocked job for Mr. Green. Who knows? He might know more himself and just be testing me out. So once more, Mr. Grimshaw, no qualifications for a bright man. That got me thinking about school. He never mentioned school. And then there was the dance at Wigton. It was his first time in the town, he said. Aged what, 21? It was only just down the road. Married 2 years later at 23. 21 years living in the same area, and not once did he venture into the nearest big town. His story didn't tally either. Now then, in our first chat, he said to me that he met Sarah at school, in Espatria, 5 miles or so from Wigton. He also said he worked on the farm most of his adult life, but Alf told me that the majority of the old farm was lying empty until Billy Turnbull took over, circa 1950. I know memory can play tricks, but surely nothing as significant as to where you met your wife to be, especially when she's such an important part of your life. And David and Mabel. Not Mum and Dad. And what happened to them? Even Alf couldn't recall much about the family before Billy's ownership. The brother. He didn't say what happened to him. His prerogative, of course, but no mention of their parting of ways. He didn't mention a death like he did with his wife. Something's not right. I will call him, just to satisfy my own inner thoughts, clarify his responses before reporting anything to Mr. Green. 6:50 p.m. No answer. I left a message on his answering machine. I hope he knows how to use it. Just a few questions, polite and courteous. I wasn't expecting a reply. I wasn't expecting him to listen to it at all or call back. But he did. Mr. Diary, where do I go from here? A voicemail message was left on my mobile when I was out of the room. A recording had been saved. This is the message below. Hello, Mr. Brunskill. I heard your message and thought for a while about whether or not I should call you. I decided to. It could be my last opportunity to be true to myself. At last. and feel peace before my life ends. Please call me when you get this message. Bloody hell, what can this be now? I'll call him back right away and update you as soon as we've finished talking. 7:15 p.m. Mr. Diary, it looks like I'm off back to Cumbria sooner than anticipated. Ernie Grimshaw wants to talk to me again as soon as possible. He told me this over the telephone, but no more. This is what he said. David and Mabel were not my parents. Not blood parents, anyway. I moved to the farm when I was 19. I haven't got a blood brother. Not anymore. David and Mabel have a son. Had a son. He was a brother to me. The best. I owe my life to him. I'm not Ernie Grimshaw. He is. I'm too old and too scared. I don't want to keep this secret any more. It doesn't matter now, anyway. You came looking for Ernie. You thought you'd found him. I'm not Ernie. Mr. Brunskill, we need to speak again soon. You haven't found your man.